My name is Helen Parker. I am 6 to 7 years old. I have white hair I pin in a loose bun. I have small hands that still remember how to knit socks and hold little hands. I have a heart that keeps loving, even when people push me away. I love my grandchildren more than anything. Their names are Emily and Jonah. Emily is 7. Jonah is 4. They are loud, messy, and full of questions. They call me Nana. I will tell you the most shocking part first, just like I promised. It was the kind of moment that stops your breath. That morning, I walked into my daughter-in-law Lisa's kitchen with 2 paper bags. The bags were full of ginger cookies, a plush bear, and new crayons. I smiled as Emily ran to hug me. Jonah climbed up on my lap. For a moment the house smelled like sugar and soap. Then Emily said the words that broke my heart. She looked down at her feet and whispered, "Mama said you're not real family. She said you should not come again." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. I sat down in a chair so fast my knees hurt. Lisa did not look at me. She moved around the counter as if she did not see the small storm inside me. I had been told before that Lisa and I did not get along. We had sharp words once, long ago. But to hear my granddaughter call me not real family said like it was nothing, stung in a place I had kept soft for years. I still gave the gifts. That is what I do. I always give. I handed the bear to Jonah. I set the cookies on the table. Then I took out the last thing from my bag. It was a plain box. No ribbons. No label. I set it gently on Lisa's counter by the sink. My hands were a little shaky. I said, "These are for you, little ones. I'll come and visit next week, okay?" Emily nodded slowly. Jonah mouthed the word okay without looking up. I kissed the tops of their heads and then I left. 2 hours later the phone rang. It was Lisa. Her voice was not steady. It sounded like a siren. "Helen," she screamed into the receiver. "You know what you did. You know what you put on my counter." She was screaming, but I could also hear a ragged kind of fear in her voice. You gave them that. You can't do this. The line went quiet for a second. Then she began to cry, a sharp, angry cry. "You have ruined everything, do you hear me? You ruined everything." I tried to say something, but my mouth would not shape a thought. I held the phone away for a moment. I looked at the empty seat where Jonah had sat that morning. I thought about little crooked smiles and sticky fingers. I thought about how Emily used to call me on her own. I thought about all the times I had driven across town just to sit at their kitchen table and drink bad coffee. "Tell me," I whispered into the phone. "Tell me what is wrong." Lisa's voice came back soft and small. "I'm coming," she said. Then she slammed the phone down. I stared at the receiver like it might move on its own. What did she mean? What could a simple box do that would make her call and scream like that? My mind spun with small images. A broken toy. A note. My thoughts went all over the place. None of it made sense. Now I will tell you how I got here. How my life curled into this moment. You need to know the history to understand why that phone call felt like thunder. My son's name is Michael. He is 38 now. He was 12 when I first held him and he was so small he fit into 2 hands. I raised him alone for a time. His father left when Michael was a baby. I worked double shifts at the diner. Some nights I came home so tired I could not lift my feet off the floor. I learned to fold worry into small, steady acts, pack school lunch, thread a patch into a coat, be there for a band concert. I taught Michael how to tie his shoes. He taught me how to play video games. Michael grew into a kind man. He fell in love with Lisa at work. She had a sharp laugh and a ready smile. For a while, I thought, maybe this is good. Lisa and I did not always see eye to eye. She wanted different things for Michael than I wanted. She spoke about family boundaries and being organized. I told myself that every family has crossed words. But I always made a place at the table for them. I baked pies. I showed up at school plays. I listened. Then the cracks started. They were small at first. Lisa liked everything neat. She liked rules. She liked the kids' birthdays to be planned months ahead. I like a bit of chaos. I like the sound of a cookie jar opening in the middle of the night. We argued over the small things until the small things became the loud things. One day, Lisa told me she wanted us to give the kids a fresh start with new parents. I thought she meant a new routine in the morning. She had something else in mind. She wanted the children to have a stable home with her and Michael and no extra people around. She began to say that certain relatives were too much for the children. Friends, I kept coming anyway. I kept bringing apple pies and stories and emergency crayons. The true break came after we had a fight at a holiday. Words were said. The kind you cannot take back. I didn't shout. I was too tired for shouting. I just told Lisa that she seemed cold sometimes. I said it with a small voice. That night the house felt heavy. The next week, their visits were fewer. Then messages came back shorter. Then my calls were left unanswered. I thought it would pass. It did not. Over months, Lisa began to rearrange things. She set a new routine. She took down pictures that included my face. She organized the kids' toys into labeled bins. Labeling is not a bad thing, but it became a way to keep me out. I would show up to pick up the children from school and they would be tucked into the car like nothing was happening. I would stand on the sidewalk and wave. Someone else would be inside who knew what to say and what not to say. I tried to be kind. I told my son we could talk. Michael looked tired. He said, "Mom, Lisa is stressed. She's running the house. She needs things a certain way." He used the words family unit like it was a shield. I felt a small pin of jealousy, but mostly I felt sad. My son was a good man being careful. I learned to step back. I left notes on the refrigerator. I left baskets of fruit on the porch. Then the grandchildren started to follow Lisa's lead. Emily was old enough to repeat things she heard. Jonah, at 4, was a sponge. I think Lisa had told them unkind words about me. One afternoon, Emily came home from preschool and said, "Mama says Nana is not real family." I remember that day because I sat very still and let the house spin. The words went into the room like a draft and settled down on my shoulders. I wanted to roar. I wanted to march over and demand answers. But I am an older woman. My hands know how to make peace. I called Michael. I asked him to talk to Lisa. He promised. He did for a day or two. Then he stopped. I could see the tightness around his mouth when he walked past me. He would not look me in the eyes. So I kept coming to the house. I brought food. I read stories. I did the things grandmothers do because I could not help it. I believed, perhaps like a fool, that love wins. I did small kindnesses like shining a pair of socks until they looked brand new. Sometimes, Lisa took those small kindnesses and turned them into arguments later. She would say, "This is my house. These are my rules." She said it not loudly, but enough. That morning I decided to bring gifts. I wanted to watch Emily and Jonah open their presents. I wanted to see the surprise on their faces. I also had one more thing I carried with me in my bag besides the stuffed bear and cookies. It was not for the children. It was not a trick. It was a careful thing. I would place it on the counter and let it sit like a question mark. I would not say a word about it. Some things make a louder sound when silence is left in their place. I tell you now that I did not go there to start a war. I went there because I hoped for a softer day. When I walked in, everything looked neat. The sunlight hit the clean floor. I put the paper bags on the table. The children ran into my arms. For a moment I was safe. Then Emily said those words. Lisa's face stayed placid. She was stirring a pot on the stove like she wanted nothing to be wrong. I set the plain box on the counter. It felt heavier than its size. I left soon after. I walked down the street toward my car, and I thought I had done all I could. I thought the small kindness might do what I always hoped kindness would do, melt the hard edges. I drove home slowly as if the road needed soothing too. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my small kitchen. I arranged the notes I kept in an old wooden box, notes from when Michael was little, a school play ticket, a drawing with stick people. I told myself to be calm. 2 hours later, the house seemed too quiet. The phone rang. It was Lisa. She was crying and yelling and all at once. She said I ruined everything. I asked her to tell me. She said, "We are calling the police." She said words I did not understand. She said that she had found something on her counter. She said people were coming. She said that they would take the children. I did not know whether to laugh or to say the truth. I had not put anything on her counter that could hurt the children. I had not done anything but leave a box and go home. But then footsteps came to my door. I heard a knock. It was loud and fast. My heart jumped into my throat. I opened the door and saw a neighbor, Mark, standing there. He looked white in the face. Behind him was a man in a uniform I did not recognize at first. He had a badge that glittered like a coin in the sun. He did not speak at first. He just held his hat in his hands. I smelled the cold of an officer. My knees felt weak. The officer asked politely. His voice was steady, but it carried a weight. "We received a call about a situation at your son's house. Are you Helen Parker?" My mouth made the name. "Yes," I said. I pointed into the small living room and tried to sit, because sitting makes all the noise in your body less loud. Behind me, in the kitchen, my phone rested on the table. I could still hear Lisa on the line, but now her words were muffled like someone speaking from far away. A neighbor from across the street stood at the edge of my yard. Mrs. Barnes, who always waters her flowers, had come out with her handbag. People started to peek over fences. The world has a way of gathering when something sharp happens. I watched them gather like birds. The officer cleared his throat. "We need to ask you some questions, This is a serious matter." His eyes met mine like two small lamps searching. "We believe there may be a safety concern for the children." My heart sank into a deep, quiet place. I wanted to say, I only brought a present. I wanted to say that I had never laid a hand on my grandchildren in anger. I wanted to say that I loved them more than my own breath. But the officer's face stayed gentle and his words grew small and heavy at the same time. At that moment, the front door slammed. It was not to my house. It was to Michael and Lisa's house. Someone shouted. A car engine roared down the street. I saw Lisa running across her lawn like a woman made of quicksilver. She was pale, and she had something in her hand that looked like paper. She was yelling for everyone to stay away. Behind her walked two more men, one in a suit, one holding a folder. The man in the suit had a look I had seen on television when bad news is given. He was not smiling. I stood at my doorway and watched the scene fall around me like rain. Neighbors gathered. The officer took out his notebook. Lisa was still screaming into a phone. I could not catch what she said except broken words, "Not real, ruined, didn't you see you did this?" She kept looking back at the counter where I had placed the plain box. Then, before I could plate the tea I had poured or say one small word, a child's voice broke the air. It was Jonah. He came running from the street, little legs pumping, face red and terrified, his small body pushing through the cluster of neighbors. He stopped short at my feet and clung to my skirt. He began to cry in big, open sobs. Emily followed, clutching her stuffed rabbit like a lifeline. She looked like a small, brave soldier who had lost her map. That was the extreme event that ended my morning and ended the chapter of peace I thought I had. Neighbors spoke all at once. The officer asked questions in a slow, careful voice. Lisa kept screaming that I had done something terrible. Someone said the word social services and then the world got very loud. I stood in my doorway with the children at my feet and the plain box on their counter somewhere across town. I did not know what that box held. I only knew that in 2 hours my life had tilted and neighbors had come out and an officer was asking questions. I only knew that the children were frightened. I pressed my hand to my chest where my heart kept beating like a questioning drum. The box sat somewhere on Lisa's counter, a silent thing. 2 hours later, Lisa called me screaming. She realized what that package meant. And then the knocking at my door began. When Jonah fell into my skirt and started to cry, everything moved too fast. People talked all at once. The officer's notebook made a small sound when he closed it. Mrs. Barnes held her hands over her mouth. Mark stood with his jaw tight. I felt tiny and very old, like a twig in a storm. The officer bent down and spoke to Jonah in a quiet voice. "Hey, buddy. Can you tell me what happened?" Jonah hiccuped and clung to me. He wouldn't let go. Emily stood behind him, clutching her rabbit and looking at me with big, worried eyes. My chest ached so much it felt like someone had wrapped my ribs in rubber bands. Lisa was still screaming into her phone. She said the word package again and again like she could make it mean more. She put something on my counter, she shouted to whoever was on the line. She put it there and left. How dare she? She wants them, she wants to ruin us. The officer looked at Lisa and then at me. "Miss Parker, did you give Ms. Thompson a package?" he asked. He used her last name like that made it official. "Yes." My voice felt like glass. I could hear the tremor. "I gave them gifts for the children. I put a small box on the counter. I didn't hide anything." "Was there anything inside that box?" the officer asked. "Yes." I thought of the 2 cookies I had not given the kids. I thought of the plain envelope I had placed inside the box and felt foolish for how heavy that envelope had felt in my hands. There was a paper. Just an old paper. At my words, Lisa's face changed. She stopped mid-scream and looked at me as if I had lit a match in a dry field. "She put a paper," she said like it was a question and a threat at the same time. She walked around the small crowd and grabbed the envelope from the counter. Her hands shook as she held it. Neighbors moved closer. Someone pushed a lawn chair into the street and sat down like it was a show. People come out of their houses for the small dramas in life. I watched my life shrink under the weight of all those eyes. Lisa ripped the envelope open in front of everyone. For a second, nothing happened but the wind. Then she pulled out a folded stack of papers and read them. Her face went white. She read faster and faster, and then she began to scream again. This time it was not just shouting. It was a sound that made people step back, a sound filled with anger and fear. "I told you," she cried. "I told you all she would try this. She's always been like this, she wants to ruin us. She wants to take everything." The officer leaned forward. "What does it say?" he asked. Lisa looked at him like he had asked a cruel question. She pointed with the papers like a dagger. "It's proof," she said. "It's proof that my home is not safe. It's proof that she could not finish the sentence without the sound breaking." For a moment I thought she would faint. She clapped a hand over her mouth and then pulled herself together. "These are records," she said. "Records from before. From when I was younger. They show I had trouble. My record. My past. Why would she give these to my children?" I could not move my eyes from the papers she held. The envelope had been small and plain, but the papers were official-looking, a header, a stamp, dates. I did not take them out in front of her. I had slipped them into the box and left them there folded tight. I did not think they would make anyone scream. Michael came running out of the house then. He had his work shirt half untucked and looked like a tired man who had been pulled awake from a long, soft sleep. His face went from calm to shocked to angry in one breath. He grabbed the papers from Lisa's hand without asking. He read one line and staggered like someone hit him in the chest. He sank onto the porch step and put his head in his hands. "Mom," he said, very small. He looked at me like he was trying to read my face for a hidden code. "Why would you bring this? Why?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to tell him that those papers were not meant to ruin anyone. I wanted to say I only wanted the truth to be seen. I wanted to tell him I had kept a secret for too long. But when your son folds like that in front of the street and an officer and all the neighbors, words feel thin and useless. The officer snapped his notebook open and made a call. "We've had an anonymous tip," he said into his radio. "Possible safety issue with children involved. Social services is en route." My stomach dropped to my shoes. Social services. The words made the world narrow into a bright, sharp tube I could not breathe through. Neighbors began whispering. "What kind of records?" Mrs. Barnes asked. She came closer and peered over Michael's shoulder, but he pushed away. Michael stood up quickly, as if stiff with anger, and pushed through the small crowd. He went into the house and shut the door so hard I thought it might break its frame. Lisa started packing a diaper bag like she planned to leave with the kids. Her hands moved fast as if to outrun the thought of what might happen. She shouted for someone to call a lawyer. She accused me of trying to sabotage them. I kept saying over and over, I only wanted to see the children. I only brought gifts. But no one heard me, they only heard Lisa's shrill voice. 2 police cars rolled into the street like a slow thunder. Their lights did not flash, and that made them feel more solemn. A social worker arrived in a small car with a logo on the door. She looked tired and soft. She had a clipboard and a badge that tasted of formality. She shook hands with the officer and then walked toward the house. She spoke in a low voice to the officer and then to Lisa. They exchanged words that sounded full of careful steps. The social worker looked at me through a lens that was kind and hard at the same time. "Ms. Parker," she said, "we have to ask that you come with us to answer some questions." I felt my knees go weak. "Do I need to go?" I asked, because if I did, I wanted to go like a person who had done nothing wrong and who had nothing to hide. My voice was small, but steady. "I will answer any question." They asked me to sit in a small room at the police station later. While I waited, I held Jonah's small body and watched Emily press her rabbit to her face. The children had been taken inside away from the street and were whispering about cartoons like they wanted to be anywhere but the center of this storm. Michael stayed inside the house. He did not speak to me. I knew the look he had, his jaw tight, his eyes glassy. He looked like my son and like a stranger at the same time. At the police station, a woman officer with kind eyes asked me to tell the story. I told it simply. I had baked cookies. I had bought crayons. I had wrapped a small plain envelope with copies of an old family document. I had placed it on the counter and gone to my car. I said it slowly. I watched the woman write. She nodded sometimes and frowned sometimes. She asked me why I had the papers. I told her the truth. They had been old letters I found when I cleaned the attic. They were letters about a young woman who had once lived in our town. The letters mentioned a name that sounded like Lisa's maiden name. I did not lie, but I also did not say everything. I did not say why I had kept the letters folded for so long. After I finished, the officer told me she had to speak to the social worker and the family. "There was an anonymous tip," she said. "Sometimes people call with worries. It is our job to check." I nodded. My hands were numb. Outside, the sun had moved and the day looked the same, but nothing felt the same. When I left the station, the street was quieter. The crowd had thinned. Someone had taken their lawn chair and gone back inside. The cars drove slower as if the neighborhood had learned to be polite about pain. I walked back to my house. The porch light was on, and my kettle was warm. I sat at my table and looked at the old wooden box with my son's school ticket, the drawing with stick people, and the crumpled program from his recital. I put my face in my hands and felt foolish for everything I had done and not done. Over the next 2 days, people kept coming by. Some brought casseroles wrapped in foil. Others whispered as they passed my gate. My phone rang with numbers I did not know. One friend said, "Helen, are you all right?" Another neighbor, Mr. Delgado, brought over flowers and said, "We're with you." Those small acts felt like umbrellas in a rain of gossip. Michael called me once. His voice was low. "Mom, you should never have done that," he said. It was not angry, it was a tired, hollow voice. "You made them look at something they worked hard to hide." "Show me the papers," I asked. "Let us sit and look at them together." "I did not mean to hurt you." He did not answer. He did not say he would. He said only, "I need time." And then he hung up. Lisa and I did not speak. She had spoken to the social worker and told a story that made everyone look at me like I had set a trap. She said that she had a past she worked hard to fix and that my handing those documents to her children would put them at risk. She said that my actions were cruel. She cried in front of neighbors and held Emily close. I watched from the other side of the street like a woman in a painting whose colors had already run. The social worker called me to a meeting where they sat in chairs like judges. They asked questions about my past. They asked about my house, my friends, my time with the children. I answered honestly. They asked if I had ever had angry fits or been violent. I said no. They asked if I had ever been involved in the children's schooling or care in ways that were harmful. I said no. They asked if I had a criminal history. I told them about the parking ticket I once forgot to pay. They did not laugh. They wrote everything down. Days passed like this. The children visited but with a barrier. Visits were supervised at first. I sat across a table and read stories like a metronome. Emily would sometimes look at me and then down at her hands. Jonah would play with his truck on the table and make engine sounds. The world outside moved with small things, groceries, mail, the weather, but inside my chest there was a large, heavy stone that would not move. Then, on the third night, I received a letter. It came in a plain envelope with a stamped return address from the Child Services Office. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a form and the words that made my breath stop: intent to file for investigation into custodial arrangements and past records concerning Ms. Thompson. There was a date for a hearing. There was a box to check whether I would attend. My vision blurred. I read the letter again and again. My name at the top looked strange in black ink. I felt suddenly very small, like a child who lost her lunchbox on the playground. The paper had turned my life into an event you could schedule. That night I slept badly. I dreamed of a small white envelope sitting still on a kitchen counter. In the dream, it grew bigger and bigger until it filled the room and spilled onto the street. People ran from the paper like it was fire. I woke up with my heart beating loud. The next morning something terrible happened. The front doorbell rang with a sound like thunder. I opened the door and found an envelope on the step. It was not a letter. It was a packet. Thick. Official. There was a stamp from the courthouse. I picked it up with hands that trembled and read the header out loud. It said, "Temporary custody hearing, emergency petition." My knees went weak. The packet had papers inside that said the children's custody would be reviewed due to concerns raised about parental fitness and past records. It was signed by a county clerk and stamped with a date that was only a week away. At the bottom of the page, a short line made my skin crawl: "Immediate action may be taken pending hearing." I did not understand everything, but I understood enough. Immediate action meant a judge could sign orders. Immediate action meant the children could be placed outside their home until the judge decided. Immediate action meant the foundation of a family could be lifted up and looked at by strangers. I stood there at my doorway with the packet in my hands and the sun in my eyes. My chest felt hollowed out. I thought of Jonah's small tears and of Emily's rabbit and of my son's glassy stare. I thought of the plain box I had left on a counter, folded small like a secret. I had not meant for any of this to happen. I had only wanted truth. Then my phone rang. It was Michael. I swallowed and answered it. He did not say hello. He said only 3 words: "They served papers." "Who?" I whispered. "The county," he said. His voice was distant. "They're asking for temporary custody to be considered. They say there is concern. They want us at the courthouse." I felt a sharp cold run through my body. "I will come," I said. "I will come and tell them the truth." Michael was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, it was like a small wind passing. "Mom," he said, "you made this happen." The line clicked. He hung up. I dropped the packet on my kitchen table like it burned me. The papers slid and fluttered like birds. Outside, a car drove by slowly. An old dog barked in someone's yard. My life now had a date on it, written by strangers. I thought of calling a lawyer. I thought of asking for mercy. I thought of my son and his tired face and of the way the children looked when they hugged me, safe and unaware of the storm. My heart beat fast and loud and then steady as if it was trying to keep me alive. I did not know what would happen next. I only knew that the next big thing was coming, and I could not make it stop. The packet on my table waited like a falling bell. The hearing was set. The word immediate watched me like a clock. Outside, the sky turned a pale blue. Inside, the house felt very small. I sat down and pressed my forehead to my hands. My whole life had been a string of small kindnesses and small mistakes. Now one small envelope had tugged a thread, and the whole sweater of a family might come undone. At that moment the phone rang again. It was an unknown number. My hands shook as I picked it up. A voice said, "Ms. Parker? This is Detective Rice. We need to ask you more questions about the envelope you left at Ms. Thompson's home." My heart leapt. I tried to steady my voice. "I will answer," I said. "I will tell everything." The detective told me to come down to the station at once. He said the words urgent and custody and evidence. I felt like a marionette with strings pulled by a stranger. I stood up and put on my coat. The packet sat on my table like a lead weight. I took it with me because I wanted to hold it close like a talisman. As I stepped outside, I saw Emily run across the street toward me. Her small face was red and there were tears on her cheeks. She blurted out, "Nana, will you still come to my birthday?" Her voice was small and hopeful. I knelt down. "Yes," I said. "I will always come." I put my hand over her small face and felt the softness of her cheek in my palm. The extreme thing had already happened. The world had a new rule now. Cards had been dealt. Papers had been stamped. But I could not let go of the children. I could not let them think I would vanish. I took a breath and walked toward the car. The detective's words followed me like rain. "Bring the packet," he had said. "Bring anything you have." I put the packet on the passenger seat and closed the door. The car pulled away from my porch and rolled down the block. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror. My kettle sat on the stove, cooling. The wooden box of my son's childhood things looked like a shrine I had not yet visited. I did not know what the detective would ask. I did not know whether the judge would sign orders. I did not know if my son would stand with me or against me. The packet beside me trembled like a small animal. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer I had not said in a long time. When the detective met me at the station, his face was lined. He led me to a room with a long table and asked me to sit. I put the packet on the table between us like a confession. He opened it slowly and pulled out a piece of paper. His expression changed from official to stunned in a breath. He looked at me and then at the paper and then back at me. For the second time since that morning, someone's face changed like the color of the sky. "What is this?" he asked, very quietly. I swallowed. I wanted to tell the whole truth. I wanted to tell him that some truths change things. But before I could speak, the phone in the room rang. The detective answered it and his words made my stomach drop. "They found something else," he said. "At the Thompson house. You should sit down." I did not sit down. My legs trembled. The detective's hand shook as he held the receiver. He covered the phone with his palm and looked at me like a man who had seen a sudden storm. "Ms. Parker," he said, "there's a development. You need to know, this may affect the hearing." My breath stopped. I could not move. The packet felt heavier than lead. Outside, the sunlight hit the courthouse sign like a coin. Inside the room, my whole life waited for whatever news would come next. And then the detective spoke words that made my stomach drop and my mouth dry. "They just found something else inside the house. It changes everything." I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to ask what, where, who, but my voice would not form. The detective's eyes were steady and serious. He said, "We need you to come with us. Now." I stood up. The chair scraped the floor with a sound like a gunshot. The packet slid and fell open on the table, papers spilling like pale leaves. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Inside, I felt my world tilt again. I had thought the worst thing was already behind me. I had thought the phone call and the packet and the social worker were the end of it. But now something new had been found, and the detective's face said this time it was bigger. I walked out of the room with the detective and a new fear climbing up my throat. In my pocket, my fingers closed around a small crayon, one I had given to Jonah. I held it like a promise. As we stepped into the sunlight, the detective spoke into his radio. "Prep the car. We're heading back to Thompson's. There's been an additional discovery. They say it changes the case." My heart dropped into my shoes. I did not know what they had found. I only knew I did not want to find out. I did not want the children to be swept away because of something I had done, no matter how small or large the thing had been. The detective's car turned onto the street where my son lived. My hands tightened around the crane until the wax cracked. The next event was coming, and I could only follow like one who had no choice. The car rounded the corner and pulled up in front of the house. Neighbors watched from across lawns like people waiting for thunder to strike. I stepped out and felt a cold wind touch my face. The officer at the door opened it and looked at us like a man who had been waiting for a storm. He stepped back and said, "Detective, there's something you need to see." I felt as if someone had lifted the sky away and left the world raw. My feet moved forward as if they were not mine. The detective followed, the crane still warm in my hand. We crossed the threshold into a kitchen where a small box had sat only hours before. On the counter, where I had placed the plain box that morning, someone had found a single, small thing tucked under the envelope. It was tiny and simple and looked like nothing. But the officer's face was a hard thing now. He picked it up with gloved hands and held it like it was hot. The small thing shone in the sunlight like a tiny coin. It looked ordinary. It looked harmless. But in the hands of an officer, it looked like proof. The detective looked at me and said, his voice low, "Ms. Parker, this is a match." My heart stopped. I wanted to ask match for what, match with whom, but the words froze. All I could do was look at the small object in his hand and watch as the room seemed to close in. He walked toward me slowly, and the neighbors watched through windows and over fences like it was a play. The officer in the kitchen said nothing. The children were inside, quiet. The packet lay on my table in the car like a folded wound. Detective Rice put the small thing down on the counter and looked at me like a man who had been told terrible news. "We will need to take this as evidence," he said. My knees trembled. I gripped the crane until my fingers ached. The world tilted one more time. Outside, a siren began to wail, closer now. Inside, the small object rested between us like a story waiting to be read. I wanted to tell them everything. I wanted to tell them why I had put the envelope on the counter. I wanted to tell them the name written on those old letters and why it mattered. But the detective's face stopped my voice. He said only, "For now, Ms. Parker, please come with us." I looked at my son's house and then at my grandchildren through the window. Emily looked up and saw me. Her eyes went wide. Jonah laughed at a truck and then stopped when he saw me leaving with the detective. He waved a small hand with the crane still in it. I waved back and said, "I'll be right back." The detective's car door clicked shut. The engine started. The neighborhood hummed. The packet of papers fluttered on the kitchen table like a small white bird. The detective said, "This changes things." I held my breath as the car rolled away. I did not know if this was the beginning of the end or the start of a long fight. I only knew that the next thing to happen would decide much of what lived in the days to come. We turned the corner. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror. I held the crane like a promise and watched the world move on. The detective's car hummed down the road, and every turn felt like it was pulling something loose inside my chest. I watched my son's house grow smaller and smaller until it blurred into the rest of the neighborhood. My fingers were still wrapped around the broken crane, the wax warm and soft like a melted piece of hope. Detective Rice glanced at me only once during the drive, his face unreadable. I wanted to ask what that small object meant. I wanted to ask why his voice had changed when he saw it. But something in his silence kept my questions locked inside my throat. When we reached the station again, he guided me inside a different room this time, smaller, colder, with a metal table instead of a wooden one. The lights buzzed loudly overhead, the kind of buzz that makes a room feel even emptier. "Miss Parker," he said gently, "I need you to sit." I did. He placed a file on the table but didn't open it yet. That made my heart beat even faster. A closed file tells you more about danger than an open one. "We're sorting through everything that's been found," he said. "We need to understand why that object was under the envelope." I swallowed. My voice felt thick. "Detective, I don't know what that thing was. I didn't hide anything." "I know," he said softly, surprising me. "But we have to understand the whole picture. Not just what you did, but what other people did, too." Other people. The words dropped into my stomach like a stone. I folded my hands slowly and said nothing. I kept holding that broken crane, letting the wax smear just a little against my palm. He flipped open the file. Inside were photos. My stomach tightened. They weren't violent or graphic, YouTube safe, clean, almost boring, but they held weight. One was a picture of the small object the officer had lifted. A tiny silver charm, shaped like a star. I recognized it instantly. It was from a bracelet Emily had when she was 3. A birthday gift from me, the kind that comes with tiny charms meant to mark memories. She wore it until one day she didn't, and I assumed it had gone missing like most toddler treasures do. I whispered, "That's Emily's." The detective nodded. "Yes. And we found it taped under the envelope. Which means someone placed it there deliberately." I blinked, confused. "Detective. I didn't tape anything. I didn't even know it was missing." "I believe you," he said again, quietly. "But the question is, who did?" He slid another photo across the table. It was a picture of Lisa's kitchen counter from earlier that day, plain white, spotless. The envelope I left was open, the documents spilling slightly. And under it, the taped charm sat like a tiny silver confession. Someone wanted the charm to be found. Someone wanted it to look like I put it there. Someone wanted the envelope to mean more than just old papers. I felt the room tilt slightly. "Detective, who would do that?" He leaned back, arms crossed gently. His face softened. "We're looking into that." But I could hear something beneath his words. Something he wasn't saying. Someone inside that house had placed the charm in a way that painted me as dangerous. Someone wanted the authorities to think the children were unsafe around me. Someone wanted me gone. A cold shiver ran down my back. I pressed my hands together so tightly the crayon nearly snapped in half again. The detective closed the file. "Miss Parker, I need to ask you a difficult question." I braced myself. "Do you feel Lisa has ever tried to keep the children away from you intentionally?" My breath wavered. I stared at the table. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "She said things before. About me being too involved. About needing space. About boundaries." He nodded slowly. "We've reviewed the anonymous tip sent to Child Services. It was sent early this morning, before you even visited the home." My head snapped up. "Before?" "Yes," he said. "Before you brought the envelope. Before the children told you what their mother said. Before you left the box." I felt the room press in around me. "Who sent it?" I asked. "We're still investigating," he replied, "but the timing is unusual." Unusual was too soft a word. My heart thudded painfully. Someone had alerted social services hours in advance, before the incident even happened. Before there was anything to report. They wanted an investigation. They wanted the children flagged. They wanted chaos. The detective stood. "Miss Parker, I'm going to speak with the social worker assigned to the case. You can step outside for fresh air if you want." But when he left the room, I didn't move. My whole body felt heavy. I sat there thinking about all the small moments, Lisa's coldness, Michael's distant eyes, the sudden supervised visits, the slow quieting of my role in their lives. Something was very wrong. And yet, I didn't feel hate. I felt sadness. A deep sadness that sat like a stone inside me. After several minutes, I finally stepped out into the hallway. The station smelled faintly of paper and coffee. An officer walked past with a mug. A woman in a blue sweater sat filling out forms. Life went on around me. I walked outside and stood under a tree. The winter wind brushed my face, cool and sharp. A few leaves rustled overhead. Then my phone buzzed. "Michael." I answered with shaking hands. His voice was sharp. "Mom, we found something else." My stomach dropped. "Michael, listen to me. It's not about the charm," he said quickly. "It's something different." "What is it?" He hesitated. I heard wind through the phone. Maybe he was outside. Maybe pacing. "We found a second envelope." My heart stopped. "What second envelope?" I whispered. "There was another one. Hidden behind the spice rack. I don't know how long it's been there." I closed my eyes. "Michael, what was inside?" He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing, slow and heavy, like he had just run upstairs. Then he said the words that shook something inside me. "It has your handwriting on it." My throat tightened painfully. "No," I whispered. "I didn't leave anything else there. I swear to you." "I know," he said, voice breaking. "Mom, that's why I'm calling." I exhaled slowly, confusion tightening my chest like a rope. If I didn't write it, who did? A long pause. Then Michael said, barely audible, "Mom, someone is trying to frame you." The wind picked up around me. Leaves rattled. My fingers numbed around the phone. "Michael," I whispered, "what did the note say?" He let out a shaky breath. "It said you were coming back for the children. That you were going to take them. That you already had plans. That you weren't going to let us raise them." My heart squeezed painfully. "Michael, you know that's not true." "I know," he whispered. "But the letter was in your handwriting. At least, it looked like it." I leaned back against the tree, feeling dizzy. Someone had forged a note. Someone had placed a child's bracelet charm to make it look like I was stealing things. Someone had called social services before anything happened. Someone wanted to remove me. "Michael," I whispered, "listen to me. You have to be careful. Someone in your house." He cut me off sharply. "I know who did it." I froze. My voice trembled. "Who?" But before he could answer, I heard a door slam behind him. A woman's voice. Sharp. Angry. "Lisa's." She shouted, "Stop telling her anything. She doesn't deserve to know." Michael's voice went muffled. "Lisa, stop." "No," she yelled. "She caused this. She's ruining everything." Then the line went dead. I stood there under the tree, the cold wind wrapping around my shoulders. My whole body felt light and trembling, like my bones were turning to air. I wanted to run to Michael's house. I wanted to protect the children. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth to stop hiding. I took one step toward the station door when Detective Rice burst outside, breathless. "Miss Parker," he said, "we have a problem." My heart dropped. "What now?" I whispered. He looked at me with a seriousness I had not seen before. "There has been a second call to child services," he said, "claiming you attempted to abduct the children." My whole body went cold. "No," I whispered. "Detective, no. I didn't. I would never." "I know," he said. "But the caller used your name." His next words were colder than the wind. "And this time, the call came from inside your son's house." I staggered back, my breath leaving in one sharp exhale. The detective stepped closer, steadying me with a hand. "This isn't a misunderstanding anymore," he said. "Someone is escalating this." I pressed my hand to my chest, tears burning behind my eyes. Not from fear. Not even from anger. From heartbreak. "Detective, what do we do?" He exhaled slowly. "We're going back to the house. Now. Before this gets worse." And then, just as he opened the car door, ready to drive us back, a black SUV sped down the street toward us. It screeched to a stop right in front of the station. The back door flew open. And Emily, my sweet, gentle 7-year-old granddaughter, jumped out, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. She ran to me and clung to my waist. "Nana," she cried. "Mama said they're coming to take us away. She said it's your fault." My heart shattered. The detective froze beside me. Neighbors across the street stepped out of their doors. Emily sobbed harder, choking on each word. "Nana, what did she mean? Why is everyone fighting? Why are they saying your name?" Before I could answer. Before I could tell her the truth. Before I could hug her tight. Lisa jumped out of the SUV, her eyes wild, her hair messy, her whole body shaking with something that looked dangerously close to panic. She pointed at me with trembling hands. "Don't touch them," she screamed. "You've done enough." The detective stepped between us, hand raised. Calm down." But Lisa wasn't listening. Her voice cracked with fear, rage, or maybe guilt, nobody could tell. "You want the truth, Helen," she screamed, her voice echoing off the station walls. "Fine. You want the truth." She took one trembling step forward. I know what that package meant. The world went quiet. Completely silent. She looked straight into my eyes, full of something raw and ugly. It means your secret is out. And before I could ask what she meant, before I could breathe, before the detective could say a word, Lisa whispered something so shocking, so impossible, so utterly devastating that the detective actually stumbled backwards. Something that froze every person within earshot. Something that set the entire story on fire. It means, she said, voice cracking, that I know what you did 25 years ago. The world tilted. The detective stared at her in disbelief. And I couldn't breathe. Not because I knew what she meant, but because I had no idea what she was talking about. For a moment, the world stood still. The street, the air, the people watching, even the wind paused as Lisa's trembling voice cut through everything like a knife. It means I know what you did 25 years ago. 25 years ago. The words spun inside my head like loose marbles. I searched my mind, every memory, every year, every moment I could grab, but nothing, absolutely nothing, connected to what she was saying. Because I hadn't done anything. Not 25 years ago. Not ever. But the look on Lisa's face, it was the look of someone who believed she had finally cornered me. Someone who believed she had uncovered a monster. And that terrified me. Not for myself. For Michael. For Emily. For Jonah. Before I could find my voice, Detective Rice stepped forward, raising both hands between us. He said firmly to Lisa, you need to slow down. Making accusations without evidence. It's not an accusation, Lisa snapped, her voice breaking. It's the truth. I found the documents. I saw the dates. I saw the signatures. I blinked hard. Lisa, I said softly, I truly don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what you think I did. But she didn't answer me directly. She turned toward the detective instead, shaking, crying, her hands twisting in her hair like the truth itself was hurting her. You don't understand, she choked. She doesn't want anyone to know. That's why she brought the envelope. That's why she left that box. She's sending a message. The detective glanced at me, then back at her. What message? He asked. Lisa let out a breath that shook her whole body. She reached into the SUV and pulled out a manila folder, thin, worn, its edges curled like it had been handled too many times. This, she whispered. She held it out like it was poison. The detective took the folder carefully, opened it, and scanned the first page. His eyebrows shot up. His eyes widened. And then, quietly, he whispered, "What is this?" My heart thudded painfully. "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. But no one answered. The detective kept reading, his expression growing more concerned with each line. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to me, then away again. He wasn't looking at me with suspicion. He was looking at me with fear. Fear for me, not of me. Lisa stepped closer, her voice a harsh whisper. "I know who you really are, Helen," she said. "And I know what happened back then. 25 years ago, in Springview County. The woman with your name. With your face. With your signature." I froze. Springview. My breath caught. I hadn't lived there long. Just 3 years. Michael had been a teenager. Life had been hard then. I worked 2 jobs. I barely slept. Those years were a blur, but nothing she was implying made any sense. I had no secret. No hidden crime. "Lisa," I whispered, "the only thing I did 25 years ago was work and raise my son." "You're lying," she spat. Her voice cracked into a sob. "You lied then, and you're lying now." Emily clung to my leg, sobbing. Jonah sat inside the SUV, red-faced and confused. Michael stood behind them, tears forming in his eyes but no words coming out of his mouth. Detective Rice closed the folder slowly. "Helen," he said, his voice gentle but strained, "this file, did you bring this? Did you ever see this before?" I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "I've never seen that folder in my life." Lisa laughed, sharp, bitter, broken. "Don't lie," she snapped. "You left the other documents. Why wouldn't you leave this one?" "I didn't leave anything except the envelope," I said firmly, tears forming. And those papers were about your past, not mine. I didn't put that charm. I didn't write that letter. I never brought a second envelope. Someone is trying to make you believe. Enough. Lisa screamed. Neighbors stepped back. A dog barked down the street. Emily covered her ears. Lisa's whole body shook as she pointed at the folder. That file says you changed your name, Helen, 25 years ago. That you were part of a case involving neglect. That you were investigated for leaving a child alone in a house overnight. Gasps spread through the crowd. My heart dropped. Not because it was true, but because it wasn't. Completely false. I hadn't changed my name. I hadn't been involved in any case. I had never once left Michael alone overnight. I was strict about that. I brought him with me everywhere. If I worked nights, he slept on the diner sofa in the staff room with a blanket and crayons. Everyone knew that. Lisa, I said softly, my voice breaking, that isn't me. Yes, it is, she cried. Same name. Same age. Same city. You're a liar. It's a coincidence, the detective said quietly. It happens more than you think. We'll verify the identity through fingerprints and photos. There's no proof this file is about her. Lisa's face twisted. She didn't want proof. She wanted someone to blame. No, she said. You don't understand. This folder didn't just show up. It was in my attic. The detective blinked. Your attic? Yes, she whispered. Hidden behind an old trunk. Wrapped in plastic. My blood ran cold. The detective's posture stiffened. That means, he said slowly, someone put it there long ago. Lisa nodded, crying harder. I found it because of the envelope she left today. The handwriting, the dates, the name, it pushed me to look. And then I found this. She wasn't lying. She truly believed what she was saying. The detective closed the folder and held it to his chest. Until we verify the information, this cannot be used as evidence, he said firmly. Lisa staggered backward like he had struck her. But we have procedures, he said. And right now, the biggest question isn't the file. He turned toward me. It's why everything is happening at once. The wind blew through the station parking lot, lifting a few leaves. A siren wailed faintly in the distance. Michael stepped forward finally, his voice trembling. Mom, did someone follow you? Did someone know you were coming today? Someone who could have planted things? Someone who... Before he could finish, the SUV's passenger door slammed open. Jonah stumbled out, tears streaking his cheeks. He was holding something in his tiny hand. Something small. Something familiar. Something that didn't belong to him. He walked up to me slowly, lip trembling. Nana, he whispered. This was in my backpack. He held his hand out. What he showed me. What he placed gently into my palm. Made my breath catch so sharply I almost choked. It was the exact same type of silver charm that had been taped under the envelope. Not the same charm. A second one. The detective stepped closer instantly. Jonah, he said softly, did you find that by yourself? Jonah nodded, hiccuping. Mama said I should keep my bag with me, but it was inside. I didn't put it there. I promise. The detective turned to Lisa. His voice sharpened. Why would there be another charm? Lisa's face went pale. I don't know, she stammered. I didn't, who would? Michael's voice broke. Lisa, what's going on? Why are things showing up in places they shouldn't be? She shook her head violently. I don't know. I swear I don't know. But the panic in her eyes told a different story. Detective Rice crouched beside Jonah and inspected the charm. Then he looked up at me with an expression that made my heart lurch. Helen, he said quietly, this second charm, this changes things. How? I whispered, barely breathing. He stood up. And his next words lifted the entire story off its hinges. Because this one wasn't taped to anything. He held it up to the sunlight. And because this one has a fingerprint. Everyone froze. Cold ran down my spine. A full fingerprint, the detective repeated. Clear. Sharp. Recently placed. Lisa gasped. Whose finger? We'll know in about an hour, the detective said. We're running it through the database now. He looked at me. Then at Lisa. Then back at me. Helen, he said slowly, there's something you need to prepare for. What? I whispered. He exhaled, heavy. If that fingerprint doesn't match you. He turned to Lisa. Then someone is planting evidence. The wind stopped. The world froze. And if someone is planting evidence, he said softly, it means someone in that house is framing you. My chest tightened. My breath thinned. Detective, I whispered, what does that mean? He glanced toward Michael, then Lisa, then the children. Then he said the only words that could make my heart drop harder than anything before. It means someone is trying to remove you from the picture, permanently. And just as I felt my knees weaken, just as the detective reached out to steady me, a police officer burst out of the station, waving a sheet of paper in the air. Detective. The fingerprint results are in. The detective snatched the paper, scanned it. And his face drained of all color. Lisa stepped back, trembling. Michael froze. I clutched Emily closer. The detective slowly lifted his eyes. And whispered a name none of us expected. A name that felt like a crack of thunder splitting the world in half. The fingerprint belongs to. The fingerprint belongs to. The detective's voice broke off. He stared at the page in his hand like the words on it were impossible. Wrong. Dangerous. Time didn't just slow, it stopped. Cars passing on the road grew quiet. The wind stopped shaking the leaves. Even the sound of Emily crying went faint, like the world was holding its breath. Detective Rice swallowed hard, then read the name out loud. Michael Thompson. Everything inside me shattered. My son. My only child. The boy I carried on my hip, the boy I fed when I had no money, the boy who grew up laughing in my kitchen, who kissed my cheek every Christmas and whispered thanks, Mom, during every hard season of his life. Michael. Michael's fingerprint. The charm in Jonah's backpack, the one someone planted, the one used to frame me. It was my son's. Lisa staggered back like she'd been slapped. No, she whispered. No. That's not possible. Michael he wouldn't do something like that. Detective Rice didn't move. He didn't blink. He said gently, fingerprints don't lie. Michael stood completely still. Not shocked. Not confused. Not frantic. Still. A frightening kind of still. Something inside me twisted. Michael? I whispered. Honey, tell them this is a mistake. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. He just looked down at the ground, shoulders shaking, not with fear, but with something darker. Something heavy. The detective took a slow step forward. Michael, he said quietly, we need you to explain why your fingerprint is on an item used to suggest your mother was acting suspiciously. Lisa's voice cracked into a sob. Michael, talk to them. Say something. Please. But Michael didn't speak. Not even a word. He lifted his head slowly, and when his eyes finally met mine, I saw guilt. Not fear. Not confusion. Not shock. Guilt. Deep, twisting, unbearable guilt. Michael, I whispered again, my voice breaking. Why is your fingerprint on that charm? He closed his eyes. Just once. Just long enough to let a truth inside him break. Then he finally spoke, his voice low, rough, cracking like something old and rusted. Because I put it there. Lisa gasped so loudly neighbors across the street heard it. The detective straightened. You put it, why? Michael looked at me. Really looked at me. And for the first time in years, I didn't see the son I raised. I saw a man drowning. A man who had made terrible decisions, buried them, and hoped they would never rise. I did it, he whispered, because I had to protect my family. My heart twisted. Protect them, from me? I asked softly. No, he whispered. Protect them, from your truth. The detective stepped closer. What truth, Michael? Michael shook his head, tears streaming down his face now. You should never have come today, Mom, he whispered. You should never have brought those papers. Lisa grabbed his arm. Michael, what is she talking about? What truth? What did you do? He pulled away from her, covering his face with both hands. I didn't want anyone to know, he choked. Not you, not the kids, not her. My breath hitched. Michael, I said gently, look at me. After a moment, he did. His eyes were red, swollen, terrified. What did you think I was hiding? I whispered. Son, I've never kept a secret from you. Not one. But you put things in that house. You forged a letter. You planted that charm. Why? He wiped his face with a shaking hand. Because, he whispered, Lisa wasn't supposed to see those documents. She wasn't supposed to know about your past. My past? I said softly. Michael, I didn't do anything 25 years ago. You know that. He flinched. Then, very slowly, very painfully, he whispered, I know. The detective frowned sharply. Then why frame her? Why create a false case? And that's when Michael's voice cracked open, raw and trembling. Because I told Lisa a story years ago, he whispered. A lie. A lie I never expected to come back. Lisa stepped back like he'd shoved her. What lie? She whispered. What lie? Michael. He couldn't look at her. He spoke to the ground instead. When we first started dating, he said, I wasn't proud of some of the things in my life. I didn't like admitting that I grew up poor. Or that Mom raised me alone. Or that I had a messy childhood. His voice broke. So I told Lisa that my mother had a history. That she'd been investigated once. I made it sound like I came from something broken. Something dramatic. He swallowed hard. I said it because I wanted her to feel sorry for me, to think I'd overcome something big. I wanted her to admire me. Lisa's hand flew to her mouth. You lied about your mother, she whispered. Michael nodded, trembling. I never thought she'd find records. I never thought she'd dig. Then he looked at me, pain splintering across his face. And when she found that fake file in the attic last week, one she thought proved everything, I panicked. I thought if she dug further, if she kept searching, she would find out the truth. The detective's brow furrowed. The truth about what? Michael finally said it. His voice barely audible. She'd find out the file wasn't about Mom, because I made it. Time stopped. Lisa staggered backward. You made it, she whispered. Michael nodded, shaking violently. I made the file years ago, before we even married. I used sample documents online. I filled in dates that matched my mother's age back then. I did it to sell the lie I told you. Lisa sobbed in disbelief. You forged a child neglect case, about your own mother? Yes, he whispered. I am so sorry. I never thought anyone else would ever see it. I hid it in the attic when we moved into the house. I forgot it was there. Everything inside me felt numb. Not angry. Not hateful. Just numb. And when you placed the real envelope today, he said to me, I thought Lisa would think it connected to the fake file. That everything would unravel. That she'd leave me. Lisa screamed, so you framed your own mother? Michael fell to his knees. I put the charm, he sobbed. I wrote the letter. I made it look like she was meddling. I made it look dangerous. I thought if it looked like Mom was acting strange, Lisa wouldn't dig anymore. Tears streamed down his face. I didn't mean for social services to get involved. I didn't know Lisa would call. I didn't know it would spiral like this. Detective Rice blew out a long, stunned breath. Michael, he said, this is obstruction. False reporting. Evidence tampering. And depending on how this escalates. He didn't finish. Michael shook violently. I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want her to think I was a liar. Lisa stared at him like he was a stranger. You were a liar, she whispered. And you dragged your mother into it. You dragged our kids into it. Detective Rice turned to me. Helen, you've been cleared. I closed my eyes. Just for a moment. Just to feel the relief wash through me like warm water. When I opened them, Michael was still kneeling on the pavement, sobbing into his hands. Mom, he whispered. I ruined everything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean. And that was the moment. The moment that broke me more than all the lies, all the pain, all the chaos. When Jonah toddled toward him and wrapped his tiny arms around his father's shaking shoulders. And Emily whispered, "Daddy, please stop crying." Lisa stood frozen. Detective Rice stepped away to make calls. Neighbors watched from their porches, stunned into silence. And me. I slowly walked toward my son. Kneeling beside him. Gently placing a trembling hand on his back. "Michael," I whispered, "you made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but you are still my son." He sobbed harder. "But you broke my heart," I whispered. His sobs quieted, sharper now, heavier. "And now," I said softly, painfully, "you must face what you did." He nodded against my shoulder like a broken child. "I know," he whispered. "I know." Behind us, Detective Rice approached slowly. "Helen," he said gently, "there's something else." I turned. He held the manila folder in his hand. "This fake file," he said, "it wasn't just forged carelessly." He flipped the back cover open. "There's a second set of fingerprints on it." My breath caught. "Not Michael's," he said. "And not yours." Lisa's eyes widened. "Whose?" The detective looked between us. His face grew serious. And then he delivered another blow. One that would shatter everything we thought we knew. "The second fingerprint belongs to someone else in your family." Everyone froze. The sky went silent. And the detective said the name. "The fingerprint belongs to. The fingerprint belongs to." Detective Rice's voice dropped into a gravity that made the air around us tighten. My heart thudded. Lisa stopped breathing. Michael froze mid-sob. Even the children looked up, sensing that something in the world had shifted again. The detective lowered the page and looked straight at us. "The second fingerprint belongs to Lisa's mother." Silence slammed over the parking lot like a heavy door. Lisa's face went white, then red, then something between shock and betrayal. My mother," she whispered. "That's not possible. She's in Arizona. She hasn't even visited our house in years." Detective Rice shook his head. "Her fingerprint is on the back of the forged case file. Fresh enough to be within the last month." Lisa took a step back, her hand trembling so violently she nearly dropped her phone. "My mother wouldn't do that," she said. She doesn't even deal with paperwork." Michael lifted his head, eyes puffy and red. "No," he whispered. "She would." Lisa whipped her head toward him. "What are you talking about?" Michael swallowed hard. He looked like he was about to crumble all over again. She called me 3 weeks ago," he said. "She said she'd found something important in the attic. I didn't know she had been in our house. I thought she was lying. Or confused. I never imagined she actually." Lisa's voice cracked like glass. "She never told me she was here." The detective crouched slightly, softening his tone. Your mother had access. She had motive. She helped raise you. She may have wanted to protect your family if she believed there were secrets." Tears streamed down Lisa's face. "No," she whispered. "Mom would tell me if she found something. She would never hide something like that. Never get involved in this." But then, her knees buckled. She remembered something. Her eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God," she choked. "Oh my God, she did say something. I thought she was just being dramatic." Michael stood shakily. "What did she say?" Lisa held her trembling hands over her mouth. "She told me," she whispered, "that no mother should have more influence over your husband than you." The words hit Michael like a punch. Detective Rice straightened. "When did she say that?" Lisa swallowed. 2 weeks ago. On the phone. She sounded angry. She said she never liked how close Michael was to his mother. She said she worried Helen could ruin our family if she wanted. My heart sank. Not in anger. Not even in sadness. In heartbreak. This entire disaster. The fake CPS file. The forged letter. The planted charm. The anonymous calls. The panic. The lies. The breakdown. It all started because two frightened people, Michael and Lisa's mother, believed love was a threat. Detective Rice exhaled. This explains why the forged file existed before you ever came today. Your mother-in-law likely found what Michael made years ago, believed it was real, and decided to add pieces to keep you out of the picture. Lisa sank onto the curb, covering her face. This can't be happening, she sobbed. My own mother. My OWN mother. Michael sank beside her, not touching her, not sure if he was allowed anymore. I'm sorry, he whispered. This is all my fault. Detective Rice closed the folder. No, he said quietly. This is a tragedy that grew from fear, lies, and misunderstanding. But it ends today. He turned to me. Helen, you are fully cleared. Every claim made against you was false. I let out a shaky breath I felt like I had been holding for years. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I was tired. Deeply, deeply tired. The detective continued, the social services case will be dismissed. You are free to resume your relationship with your grandchildren. There will be no restrictions. Tears filled my eyes. Emily and Jonah rushed into my arms, burying their faces in my chest, their small bodies trembling. Nana, Emily whispered, are you staying? I held her tight. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Then I stood. Slowly. Painfully. With all eyes on me. Michael looked like a child who expected to be punished. Lisa looked like a woman whose entire world had cracked down the middle. And both of them waited. Afraid. Ashamed. Expecting vengeance. Expecting fire. Expecting me to turn around and walk away forever. Instead, I stepped toward Michael. I touched the side of his face, softly, the same way I did when he was a boy who came home with scraped knees and tears he didn't want anyone to see. Son, I whispered, you broke my heart, but hearts can heal. He sobbed, grabbing my hands. Mom, I'm so sorry. I put a finger on his lips gently. Hush. Today needs less talking and more truth. He nodded, shoulders trembling. I then turned to Lisa. She stiffened. But I didn't yell. I didn't blame. I didn't accuse. I simply said the gentlest words that came to me. You were trying to protect your family. You were wrong, but fear makes us blind. Lisa broke, collapsing into tears. I'm sorry, she choked. I'm so sorry. I nodded softly. I forgive you. She cried harder. People imagine revenge is fire, screaming, punishment. But sometimes the deepest revenge, the most powerful revenge, the most unforgettable revenge, is choosing kindness in the exact moment someone expected hatred. It tears them open. It forces them to change. It makes them see themselves clearly. Forgiveness is the kind of revenge that turns a storm into silence. I stood in the middle of the parking lot with my family collapsing around me. And I chose peace. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. And so I said the one thing I knew needed to be said. Michael, I whispered, after today, everything changes. He nodded, tears falling. I know. And you have a lot to repair, I added. You broke trust. And trust is earned slowly. I'll do anything, he whispered. Lisa looked up, wiping her tears. So will I. I nodded. We rebuild. Carefully. Slowly. And the truth stays in the open this time. Then I knelt beside the children. Emily, I whispered, I will always be real family. That will never change. She hugged me fiercely. Don't leave again, Nana. I kissed her forehead. I won't. The detective finally closed his folder and stepped back. I'll file the final reports. There may be interviews, but your name is clear, Helen. Completely. And as he walked away, Lisa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her face paled. It's my mom, she whispered. She's calling. Michael put a hand out. No, he said softly. Not right now. For the first time, Lisa didn't argue. Instead, she looked at me. Her voice was small. Shaken. Raw. Helen, what now? I took a breath. A long, steady, careful breath. And I said, now, we start over. Not from scratch. From truth. Because revenge was never the point. Revenge happened by accident the moment the lies collapsed. What mattered was what came after. I stood, holding Emily's hand, Jonah clutching my coat. And together, we walked toward home.